everyone. My name is Amanda Rodriguez, and I am an assistant professor here at UNL and also the director of the Concussion and Vestibular Evaluation Lab, or the CAVE Lab. I wish so badly that we can be there in person to be able to talk about our project and what my lab does, and to really show my excitement to be able to work with you guys for the year. But since we can't, I hope the presentation will kind of give you a little taste into what we do and kind of get your wheels turning if you think you really want to work with our team on our Husker Concussion Rehabilitation mobile application. So in my lab, what we do, we actually are a team of all clinical audiology doctoral students. I have a couple of medical physicians that work in my lab as well on occasion. And what we do, we serve kind of two hats. The first hat is that we have an opportunity to really work with the athletic department here at Nebraska, where we provide dizziness and balance testing for all Nebraska student athletes. And we also test those athletes if they have a concussion and they have dizziness and balance symptoms. And so we also work with the community in youth concussions as well. And then in turn, we also answer some really cool research questions about what happens to your vestibular system and your balance system after having a sports concussion. We think our work is really important because a lot of our athletes will tell us, after concussion, this is what I feel. I feel like the world is just jumbling. I feel dizzy, imbalanced, nauseous. I got a headache. And what we're learning about in the research is that having these symptoms really protracts or prolongs a student athlete's ability to go back to the classroom or back on the field. And that can have a really negative sequela afterwards. So we know that the quicker that we can get in there and intervene or treat our athletes who have these symptoms, the better off that they're going to be. And that really leads us to kind of our application and why this is important. We help our athletes get better by doing something called vestibular rehabilitation. And essentially, it's kind of like a workout program for your balance and your eyes and your ears to work together. And this workout program is something I kind of prescribe to the athletes by using a set of exercises that makes them progressively move their body and their eyes and their head from going very, very slow to ramping up to be much, much faster. With the idea that the sooner we can do that, the better off they're going to be in terms of how they feel and how they get back to regular activity. We do a couple of testing parameters in my lab in order to not only test the system, but also to see how they're progressing through their rehab. So the first thing that we do is eye tracking. We actually measure the ocular motility of the eyes to see how they're working together, how they're working independently, and how well an athlete can visualize and track objects, really important for sport performance. We also measure their balance, right? So we test how well they're able to keep nice and steady while doing different conditions. So in one of these conditions, like Jonathan here, he's on a forced plate and we're measuring his balance as the plate moves and as the visual surround moves. And we make it pretty hard for the athlete because we actually want to see where's the breakdown happen, because I don't want him or her to have an orthopedic injury because they were, unsteady. Another thing that we do as part of our rehab, as well as our testing, is called gaze stabilization. So in this test, the person would be standing on a piece of foam because that makes it harder to balance. And he's actually wearing a head tracker. The tracker's picking up how fast his head is moving while he is watching a computer that has a visual letter. And he has to tell me the letter as he's moving his head. And so in this, we want to see how fast can an athlete move his or her head while still seeing targets really clearly. And the faster that you can do that, the better that you can do that, the better your sport performance may be, or how better you might be feeling after a concussion. And that's kind of what's shown here on this graph. But we have a couple of problems, and this is kind of where you guys come in and why this was so important for us to sort of start thinking about. The problem right now is that vestibular rehab programs are really kind of geared for the geriatric population. So the exercises that we're using, the format that we're using is kind of old school. I basically give an athlete a piece of paper and I say, do these exercises 3 times a day, and then I'll see you back here in 3 days. And really the focus is kind of like, let's not make them fall. Let's be sure that that they feel okay. It's really not a program that's fresh and innovative and targeted more for an athletic population. And we think we really need that because a lot of our athletes think it's really boring. And if they think it's really boring, they're not going to do it. And that is something that we really want to get to the bottom of, to be sure that our athletes are compliant and feel like they're actually making really good gains in their program. And really, I feel like the demands of an athlete is so much different than an older adult, right? So I want to be thinking really innovative about how we kind of tailor this program for an athlete. But secondary to that, our lab just doesn't focus on Nebraska athletes. We actually also focus on youth sports across the state of Nebraska. And what I've learned is that being in the Nebraska community with a very rural landscape, a lot of the kids that I see don't have access to a vestibular specialist or a physical therapist or anybody like me to be able to give them rehabilitation quickly. And so if they do be able to see those individuals, it takes travel and it takes a lot of money. So it really got me thinking about how inaccessible a lot of vestibular rehab is for the general population. And so that really sparked into the fruition of this application that I want to develop and kind of the dream that we have in our lab. And so I got to thinking about how was a way to really market the availability of a vestibular rehab program. And what came to mind was to develop an application-based vestibular rehab program that athletes can download wherever they're at. And this application can be worked along with a clinician who can monitor their symptoms and monitor their actual outcomes using this application. Well, right now, we don't really have that opportunity. I don't know for a fact if an athlete actually does their rehab because they have a piece of paper and they just tell me they did or they didn't do it. But an application would allow us to get objective data alongside. And that's really important for the clinician to know, are we progressing as we should? Are we going too fast or too slow? But I'm not a programmer and no one in my lab is. So that's where you guys come in. We really want a team of people who are interested in kind of bridging technology and science and healthcare together. And this application is something that I really want it to be something that's accessible. It's really important. But also, could we integrate some tools within the application that we kind of have in our clinic for something very simple? Like, could the application integrate a metronome where the athlete can then keep a beat to move their head faster and faster? Or could it have a timer that the athlete knows they have to stand on one leg with their eyes closed for 15 seconds? Or even can they rate their symptoms so that way I know if the rehab is working or not? And so as a researcher, I also want on the backside to be kind of piloting these phases of this application out and validating it against what we currently do. And I really want you guys to be a part of that process because it's really important that you kind of see how a product like this can go to being kind of small scale to really making an impact in overall healthcare. And so talking about impact, I hope that you're kind of seeing that the impact of this application, I think, could really be seen threefold. And so the first impact would really make a really good imprint on our university as a whole. I really love the idea of having an opportunity to have UNL students like you guys work on a tool that can have an impact on other UNL student athletes. So peer-to-peer impact. Concussions are happening in Nebraska every single season. And it's really important that you guys are able to contribute to the state of Nebraska in this way. Again, and from a state level, not just Nebraska student athletes, but just Nebraska in general, there's a lot of concussions happening, like I said before. And so having a rural landscape of Nebraska allows us to consider alternative ways to make an impact on improving accessibility, improving the ability for young kids and other athletes to be able to access the care that everyone else should be receiving. And then lastly, from a national level, this tool would really be one of the first in the country to really be specified and specific to a sport population. And I can already tell you there's going to be a lot of traction and interest from other sport institutions around the country about how we're optimizing vestibular rehab to be accessible and efficient for the common program. So kind of take home, I hope that I've kind of hit on very quickly kind of what our lab does and what our goal is. But, my lab operates on the take home of concussions are going to happen, but it doesn't outweigh why a student athlete should participate in sports for their physical and mental health. But our job in our lab and why we want to kind of intermingle with you is to be able to collectively feel like we're going to make an immediate impact on their overall health quality. How can we minimize their symptoms? How can we shorten their recovery times in a safe way? And one way to do that is to develop this application, is what I believe. So I hope that you guys are interested, and I hope that we can create something really cool together. And I hope that I get to meet you guys in person, and I hope that you guys stay safe and well, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Thanks so much, and take care.